Hi friends, welcome back to Watercolor Wellness. Now today we are doing lesson 11 and we are looking at still life, how to paint still life fruit in watercolor. Now throughout this course or series that I'm doing on YouTube, which is my beginner watercolor course, and we're coming to an end I think in 1 or 2 lessons. We are getting closer and closer to the end. Now, these are the basic techniques, basic exercises, and these are things that you can develop further on. But the most important thing that I want to tell you again today is just to have fun. Don't aim for perfection. Don't aim for being overly realistic in your painting. Aim for having fun. The rest of the things will come as you progress, as you have fun, as you make time for yourself to sit down and paint. The techniques and things will continue to develop. So I've given you basically just a very beginner course in it, and I just want you to really focus on having fun, just making some time for yourself and letting the paint and the water play with each other on the paper and just enjoying that process, because all the other things will come with time and with practice. So today we are looking at still life, how to do a bowl of fruit, and I'm going to use a reference photo for this one actually, because I've got so much lighting happening here that, you know, putting down something, the whole idea when I do my watercolor is not to have any shadows so that you can see what's happening on my paper. But of course, because I have lights going here and I have lights from here and lights everywhere, so that we have as little shadows as possible. But I'm going to use a photo, and it's okay to use photos. In class we will use, I might get some fruit, I'll see what I can get, but yeah, so we'll see what we can do. But for today's lesson we are basically using a reference photo. So I got this off Facebook. Free reference photos for artists is what the page is called. And the photo we are using today is a photo by Wendy Hodgkins Cornicket. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Thank you very much for your photo that we are going to use today just for the purpose of having a free lesson on watercolor and painting fruit. Okay, so just a couple of notes that I've made to help you with this process. Now, I'm also going to put the outline on my website, so the description, in the description below, there will be a link where you can download the outline. But in any case, try and draw it if you can. Practicing drawing will eventually make your drawing better, and your sketching will improve that. So try if you can. Otherwise, more than welcome to use the outline that I'm going to give you. Okay, so let's first have a think. Look at this image for just a few seconds, and I want you to look at where the shadows are. So have a look at which side has got the most shadows on it, where your shadows actually are. The bowl is white. What color do you reckon the shadows look like? And where is the shadows on the bowl? Where is the highlights on the bowl? Where's the highlights on the fruit? So my lighter areas and my darker areas. Okay, after you've done that, so do that for a few seconds and just have a look at where your shadows are. Okay, now a couple of things. So take note of where the light is. So that's the first one, light and shadows. The second tip that I want to give you is we're going to start with underpainting our complementary colors. Now, if you remember from our very first lesson when we did our color wheel, complementary colors are the colors across from each other, and underpainting means that's a very first light layer, and we're actually using that for shadows. So for our yellow, I'm going to use, because our yellow will be in these ranges, so I'm going to use a very dark purple, but with watercolor, lightly mixed with water, obviously. So I'm going to use a very dark purple for my underpainting of my shadows. Let that dry, and then I'm going to start layering my yellow. Okay. Next tip is to build up your layers. So we're going to start with that underpainting, and then we're going to build onto that until we get our darker shadows in it as well. Try and keep your highlights, so keep on looking at that image exactly where the light is falling onto it, where your highlights are, and where some white areas are, because those you might want to mark out with something like masking fluid, or you really want to make sure that you keep them white, and at the end we can add some white with either something like a pencil or a gel pen or acrylic painting. The goal of this is to have fun. So if you want to use white acrylic paint in the end to add some highlights, do it. Okay, texture. Now, to get some nice textures into your lemons that we're going to do is we're going to use lots of wet on wet. So paint the whole lemon and then add in a couple of different colors while it's still wet to add a bit of texture to it. Don't get too stuck on the details and have fun. That's the aim of the game. Watercolor wellness. It's good for your soul. It's good for you. Sit down, just have some fun. Don't be too hard on yourself. Be kind and just enjoy the process. Okay, so let's get started. Now I'm using my Mei Liang watercolors today. I've already given them a spray so that they can start, mixing the water and the pigment. The sketch will be in the description, as I said, the outline for it, if you do want to practice this one. And I'm going to use my ceramic palette that I've got here. I might just clean it a little bit as we are going to paint with yellow, and my yellow here has become a bit mucky. So just clean out this one. Okay, now let's have a look at our image. So I'll try and keep that up the whole time while we are busy with it. So I'm going to actually start with the underpainting for my lemons, and I'm going to use my Princeton Aqua Elite No. 2 brush for this. I've got my microfiber cloth here, and I've got 2 water bowls, one for dirty water and one for clean water. So I'm just taking a purple and mixing it with lots of water. So if you have a look at this, if your yellow is this side, you want to use more of a violet instead of a red violet, so more the cooler color of it. Let me show you here. So you want to use, across from the yellow, we want to use the violet and not the red violet. So we're going to the cooler color, which is more across from my yellow. Okay, so that's going to be my shadow color, but use a lot of water. You just want to be this to be like a light underpainting. Okay, so let's have a look at where my shadows are. So first of all, I'm going to start with this lemon here on the left, and I'm just going to paint the whole one with water first. So from my clean water bowl, I'm painting this whole lemon just with water. Now let's drop in some of this purple where my shadows are. So first I have shadow behind this lemon coming out here, and I'm just letting that paint flow into the lemon. Then I have one underneath this leaf. There's some more shadows. So doing this underpainting helps you the whole time to know also where to build color and where to keep it light, because you're already putting that underpainting down and you're already keeping your highlights white. So, and then for this one, so you're just putting a little bit of paint on your brush, and then also here we have a bit of a shadow. But now I'm cleaning my brush and I'm just using the clean brush to lift up some of that paint as well. Okay, so that's my first one. Let's move on to this one on the right. So first painting it with water again, just with water. And now having a look at the photo where my shadows are. So first I have a shadow on the left of it. And then I have a larger shadow here on the right. And a tiny one here at the top. Okay. Now, underneath here in between, there is a lemon that you can sort of see through the photo. In the photo you can see it peeking out there behind. So I'm not wetting that area first because that's quite a dark area, so I'm just going to fill it in with the purple right away. And same below this green one. I'm also going to add some purple, which is a dark shadow. Now for the green lemon that's at the back, or lime, that's a lime, we can use a more warm color, so we can use the warmer purple, which is the red violet. But let's first let these ones dry before we paint those two. So let's move on to some of the leaves. Now again, my leaves, we can do an underpainting with that, and we can do a very light red underpainting for the green leaves. So I've got some red here that I can use already in my ceramic mixing bowl, so I'm just going to add water to that and reuse some of that color that I've got in there. Okay, so for my leaves, let's first do this one. So just with water first. And then I'm going to have a look at where my shadows are. They're mainly on the top part of this leaf. And then there's some here at the bottom as well. And you can almost do some lines going in with some highlights in between. Okay, this leaf over here. So I've sketched them, so this one's behind that one. In the photo, it's the other way around, so I'm just going to add my shadow here where the one goes over the other, and then a bit of a shadow here at the top and some here in the middle. Okay, while this dries, I'm just going to move on to the green ones over here. So there's a nice big one that we can paint with water first. So this one's shadow is mostly on that side of the leaf. Because the leaf is sort of folded in half. So you want to do your shadow on the right hand side and then try and keep this clean and dry on the left. So just clean your brush and lift up some of that color again. And then it does have a bit of a darker area here. So just keep looking at that photo and mimic where they've put their shadows. Okay, we've got one there at the back that we can do. So painting with water first, and same, this one is darker on the left. And wipe my brush and then just lift up some of that. And just see, it does have a bit of darker spots here. I just want to keep this really light and soft today. It's just a dog stretching, no farting. Okay. And then we have a leaf over here and one over here. So this one coming out here at the back. Whoops, my brush was dirty. So just lifting up some of that color and putting in some darker shades here. And then also this little piece coming out here. And then for this leaf over here, it's darker underneath, so that's there. Okay, let's go back to this one over here. So painting it with water first, and then our shadow will be just here on the left as well. And then I'm just lifting up some of that and softening that color. Now, using wet on wet, it does give you a bit of less control, but it also adds to the softness and the beauty of watercolor. Okay, so now we need to do those 2 lemons. Well, the 1 lemon and the 1 lime. So paint with water first for this one. And this one's shadow is more here in the middle. So on this part. And then clean your brush because you have a highlight on this side that you want to keep. So just all around that. And then it's also got a bit of a shadow going down here. So this adds to some of the texture on there as well. And then for the lime, we're going in with the red again. So clean brush. And shadow is mostly here in the middle. And a little bit underneath this leaf. And then clean my brush so that I can lift out some of the highlights. Okay, so this is our first step for our lemons and our leaves, purple and red. So we'll move on next. Just let this dry properly, so you can use a hair dryer or just give it go make yourself a coffee. And then once this is dry completely, we'll start layering with our yellow and our green. Now I want to do my yellow or my lemon in one go. So I'm going to add texture, I'm going to add a bit of green into it, and I'm going to add the yellow all in one go because I want to build onto these layers, add the texture and do everything wet and wet so that we can get a really nice effect, but also not get too stuck on those details. So let's mix our yellow. And I'm not using that very bright yellow, I'm using the one just next to it. So in my palette, it's the second one. So you can mix a little bit of this one as well, the very bright one. We can use that in some areas for our highlights. So mix some of the darker one with the water, and then just a little bit of the very bright one as well. Just putting water in mind for now. Okay. So let's start. So have your green ready that you want to use for your lemons, and have your yellow ready, and maybe a little bit of brown. Okay, so let's start with this one on the right. This one is the lightest and brightest one. It's a bit more of that bright yellow color. So painting it with water first, the whole one, going over my purple as well. And now I'm going to take my yellow and I'm dropping it in where I've put my shadows. So this is your guide to where your darker areas will be. And just dropping it in on top of that purple. And then you can bring it out a little bit as well, but try and keep some white space also. Now for my for some texture, I'm just going to do a very light mixture of green, like an olive green color, and I'm just dropping in some tiny bit of that orange or that green color as well. This just ensures that your color is not just flat. Add some interest to it. Okay. Now I'm just going to take some of that yellow directly from my palette as well and drop some in here by the darker areas also. adding a bit more texture. Okay, and I think that's basically it for this one. Now I've kept some of it white, which will be my highlight, and the rest of it will just dry by itself. Okay, so let's move on to this one on the left. So first, paint with water. Now this one has got a little, you can do a little green point. Let's do our yellow. So where my purple is, I'm dropping in my yellow, following all on those lines. Keeping my highlights, and then a little bit of green, same as what we did before. And some yellow directly from my palette. This time I'm using a bit more of that brighter yellow actually, and just dropping in some of that as well. And a bit of the darker one. Just adding a bit of texture. So keep on where you've put your shadow so that you don't go into your highlights for this. Okay, let's move on to the one here in the front. So I'm just going to be mindful not to touch the others because they might still be wet. And again, I'm just dropping in my yellow. Drop in some green. And then let's do that lime at the back. So we're going to need a bright green for that one. And I'm just painting it green. Now you can wet this one first as well. I forgot because I'm having too much fun. So just painting it green, getting some green directly from my palette. To just dab in some of those darker areas. Now you can also dab in a little bit of brown. Okay, and then I want to paint those areas in between just with the yellow as well. I'm not wetting that area first, just going in directly with the yellow above the purple. So second layer. Try not to touch your green or let it dry first. Okay, yeah, I've got some smudging happening. So I'm just going to dry this with a hair dryer so that it doesn't smudge. Okay, let's move on to our leaves for now, and then we'll come back and do some more highlights in our some highlights and shadows into the lemons. Okay, mix your green color that you'd like to use for your leaves. And this time I'm not wetting them first, I'm just going to paint them directly with a flat mixture of one color because we already have our shadows in there. So you can automatically make it a bit darker as you paint. Where your red is as well, we put the shadow color. You can drop in some more paint there, give it texture. Just add a couple of lines in the lighter areas just to give it a bit of a texture. Okay, so I try not to paint things directly next to each other, so it just gives them a bit of a chance to dry in between. And I'm adding in some darker areas here right above this lime because we do want a contrast. We don't just want the leaf and the lime to be the exact same color. So I'm adding in some different colors of green and just making sure there's some contrast between the colors. Okay, so we'll just continue doing this for my leaves. So just wherever you have those shadows, you're just dropping in some of the darker colors or the color directly from your palette. To mix with water on the page, and then a couple of lines. Okay, coming back to my lemons, I'm going to do one more layer of yellow on there, and then so this time I'm not wetting them first, I'm just going in directly with my yellow and mostly focusing on my shadow areas. I'm mixing more yellow in here, so you want to 70-30% probably, if we're talking ratios now, so more paint than water, and just going in directly and painting where my shadows are. And then sort of using dry brush to just bring that color a bit more in, but try not to go over your highlight. So again for this one, and using dry brush to just bring that color out. So if you have too much paint on your brush, just wipe your brush on your cloth, and then you just take that brush without any paint, and that is your dry brush technique. So painting where my shadows are. Okay, and then we also just need to paint these two shadowy areas in here. I do a little bit more purple on these actually, because we want them to be darker. Okay, now let's do the bowl. Now the bowl is white, but it's got a highlight underneath here. So that highlight sort of comes down like this, and it's got a bit of a lighter area here, and then also darker on this side. Okay, now I'm actually going to mix Payne's grey, so very dark blue. If you don't have Payne's grey, take a bit of dark blue and then a little bit of black, and you can even add a little bit of brown to that to make a nice dark blue mixture, Payne's grey mixture. Okay, so let's first paint our, no, actually we're going to paint one layer here over the top of the whole bowl. Okay, and then that is a really big highlight, so you want to keep that white for now. And we are doing this part. Now I'm going to add more water to my mixture because I want a really light area here. And then I'm going to add even more water to this and make a very, very light area on this side. And then you can work a little bit on that line just to have those colors blend a bit better, but not completely blend. You still want that line there, but you can just soften it with a bit of water. Okay, now I want to add my darker area. So now I'm going to add more Payne's grey, and I want to add a darker shadow here. Some of that goes down here. And then our dark, we also have a dark area inside this bowl. So now I'm just taking a bit of clean water and softening some of these edges still. And same with this one, just a bit of clean water. Whoops, too much. Just want to soften this edge. Just a little bit. And then add a bit of darker line just down here. So we have some contrast between the bowl. Okay, and then of course you can do the background table that they've got, but for something like that I'll just use a larger brush. Let me just dry this quickly. Now you can do the table, or you can do just a plain, like a dark black background or something, or black blue background, just not the same, like have some contrast between your bowl color. So I'm gonna add more black to that so that we just have a bit more contrast. So I like doing a background with a larger brush. And I'm not going to do that table exactly. Just going to do something like this. Because this will also help your bowl to sort of stand out. There we go. I think that's all I'm going to do with it. You can add a darker background if you want to add some of that dramatic background that they've got in the photo. Maybe that's totally up to you. What you can do, different backgrounds, you can whatever you like. But yes, so that is our still life fruit in a bowl. I hope you have enjoyed this one and followed along, and give it a go. And as I said, focus on having fun. Have fun first, the rest will come. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so that you can get the notifications when there's a new video coming out. And I'm working on some exciting things, so if you are subscribed to this channel, you will hopefully before the end of the year see the release of my book as well. So yeah, exciting stuff to come. And yep, that's it from me. See you next time.